Okay. Well, anyways, I want to be able to dive into God's word here today. As I mentioned earlier, this is Stay in the Will Day. It was coined years ago. That was something that we, as my family, my mom instilled that in me. She instilled godly principles and the fact that if I ever miss a Mother's Day, I'm out of the will. So you know what? I just honor that right now. No, I am so thankful for my mom and for all of the moms and all of the women out there that have had that sort of impact on our lives. But I want to also thank you because Mom, especially my mom, for loving me more than not loving me. Would you say that? And so I'm sure many moms out there, you've probably had that happen because I truly believe that mothers have this chemical imbalance that allows them to be that numbs them to the imperfections of their children. I think that's what happens. I think that something happens inside that their children are perfect, that they can do no wrong. And it's okay. God created moms to have that sort of attitude and, to be the president of fan clubs for their kids and stuff like that. And I think that that's good. But I do want to let you know that it comes as no shock. I'm not a mom. And so to be able to speak to women today, I actually probably think that this is maybe the most challenging message out of the calendar that I ever have to speak, because I'm like, I don't know what to say. I'm still trying to figure out women. It's a beautiful discovery, trying to figure that all out. But I don't get you, and guys, we don't get you either. And I just got to be clear up on that. And so, before I get into the message here, I thought that maybe on behalf of the men, I could share some things with the women, just that maybe the men haven't had an opportunity to say, or maybe they're too afraid to say there. But let me start with something simple. Let's go with throw pillows. Okay, can we just talk about throw pillows for a moment here? Because I looked it up, and apparently men, we misunderstand what a throw pillow is compared to women. This is just something you need to understand. I looked up the definition of what a throw pillow is, and this is exactly what it says on there. It says a throw pillow is a small, decorative pillow placed on a chair or a couch. I noticed it said one, and it doesn't say that the throw pillow covers the chair. It doesn't say that it covers the couch or covers the bed. It says, see, men, we always thought that throw pillows meant that's what we do when we actually want to do something. We throw the pillows on the ground, right? We just do that because then that we can actually sit on the chair or sit on the couch or find out the person that was actually still sitting there when the pillows were put on top. We find that stuff out, and I love all the decoration. Believe me, I love it all. But I want to know that we have enough throw pillows in our house that if I put them on the floor, I could play the floor is lava for years and I'd be fine. I would be totally okay in that. And also, on behalf of the men, I just wanted to be able to share with the women today that. It has to do with the phrase, does blank make me look blank? I already hear some snickers in the room. I wish you were in here right now. And they're low frequency snickers. Because you can fill in those blanks with whatever does blank make me look blank? You can fill that in with whatever you want. Somehow, God takes that sentence, and by the time it gets to the men, we may have heard those words, but our mind already translates it into, do we want to live? That's really what it turns into as a sentence there. And the third thing that I wanted to do is I want to be able to speak to, I've sat at dinners where there's men and there's women, and I think it's important that we need to understand that women and men, they communicate a little differently. And so I'm going to ask the cameras, if you could zoom in on this, it's going to be really important that the women understand, and I speak on behalf of all men, is that this doesn't mean anything to us. We have no idea what means. And we could sit at a table as men, and we'll see women will look at each other, and they'll start doing something like this. They have a full-blown conversation, okay? Like men, we think they're having seizures. Like I want you to understand that we kind of do better with the actual words. And so just I wanted to just kind of share that. And I know like it sounds like I'm ribbing women. I'm not. I'm just trying to, and I know maybe some of you are like, well, like, are you going to be able to get in the house? And maybe it'll be like, Revelation, like I stand at the door and knock. I'm not really sure. But like this, I love it. And I am so thankful for the women. But I just, men, and we don't always get things. I think that women, I'm being honest, women, it's scientifically proven, they can like seriously process things at a faster rate than men. And I think it's just important sometimes that we, like when we're thinking about like small children, we have to think in the eyes of the small child. Like women, you just need to have that sort of mentality with some men. So anyways, I just wanted to let you know there. But I know I've already said that I don't understand women, and that's okay. But there's something else that I don't understand more than trying to understand women, and it's this. When did society decide to silence them? When did men, and I say society that way, but when did men feel that they needed to silence women? Like how, and I'm going to be brutally honest this morning, you're going to hear some real raw honesty from me today. But as I was reflecting on this and preparing for this message, I was wondering like how insecure have men been that somehow we felt as though we needed to dominate or intimidate women? That what benefit came from the idea of men seemingly breaking the spirit of women for generations and generations and stopping thus them fulfilling God's potential and God's possibility in their lives? Like, I want you to understand, and I believe that you could put this in the chat room as well. I know that we've been making comments. I loved some of the things that Jesse and Rebecca were saying, and I was kind of worried that maybe they were looking at my notes. But I would have loved, and whether you had done it before or do it now, I'd love for you in the chat room to throw down some of the spiritual giants that have been in your life that have been women. Because I have some people in my life that have been monumental at helping shape me as an individual, and so many of them are women. I even just look at my own tribe, and I look at, my mom, and I thank God for my mom and the fact that she honestly believed in me, and I could go on for a long time, but I'll just say that I look at my life, and I think there were so many odds going against me, but my mom always believed in me, even though we'll leave that. That's another story. But you know what? I am so thankful for that. And I look at my own personal tribe now and how that has now grown into the place where I've got, Carrie that has just been so instrumental at encouraging me and being by my side. And I'm so thankful for her. And there's so much of the good things that may have developed in my life, they've developed because of her. And I'm so thankful for that. And then I look in and see how it's reflected now in my daughter Tristan, and see how she's a mom, and I'm like, wow, how did you learn to do that? I'm sure you didn't learn it from me. You must have learned it from Carrie, how to be a good parent and stuff. And I look at Chrissy now and our family now too, and I'm just so thankful for the women, how they show me things. And little Rory, oh my goodness, she'll get a pony, I'm sure, for me. But it's just I am look at these women, and when we allow them into our lives, they can speak so much to us there. I look at even our church denomination. We're part of our covering as the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada. And so many of our churches in our history were founded by women in communities, starting with a prayer meeting or starting in their house or whatever. And what happens, for so many times, is that these churches would grow and grow and grow until they were big enough for a man to come in and mess everything up. It was just okay, we're good enough. And some guy felt like they could come in and do better at that. And so we were doing this series called The Rings. And so last week we looked at suffering, and you can look at that message, whether it's on YouTube or on Facebook. But this week, the message title, put it in the chat room. It's called Halting the Hindering. Halting the Hindering. That is the message title for today. And yes, I know we've been kind of sharing it, and I've been saying it online. I am going to use a text that I am borderline convinced has never been used knowingly for a Mother's Day service. And, I may, after this, recommend that no one ever do. I'm not sure. But I'll tell you, I really felt that God was putting this passage on my heart to be able to speak honestly and truthfully to not only women, but to speak to men today. And I tell you this, I would rather be caught trying to repeat the words of God than trying to remember the voice of God. I'd rather be trying to do this. And so I am going to try to repeat what I believe God has put in my heart today. And so it comes from a passage found in 2 Samuel. Now, some of you that are part of our devotionals are going, whoo, that's coming up like in about a week and a half. Yes, we're getting to 2 Samuel chapter 21. 2 Samuel chapter 21. I want to take a few minutes here, if you allow me, and just kind of look at this passage here for a moment. And it says this in verse 1 of chapter 21 of 2 Samuel. It says, during David's reign, there was a famine for 3 successive years. So David inquired of the Lord, which means to seek the face. It's going to translate, he sought the face. He took time and prayed. And the Lord answered, it is due to Saul and his bloody family. Now, I don't think that it's like a British bloody family, but I think like it's Saul and his bloody family because he killed the Gibeonites. Can I just say, good on David? Something's going wrong for 3 years, and David actually goes to God and is saying, what's wrong? And he's kind of ready for it maybe to not, maybe it's me, not really sure. He had that willingness to say, maybe I'm part of the problem here. And I'm sure that David, when he was talking to God and God said, no, it's actually about Saul, David's like, oh yeah, sure, yeah, it was Saul. Of course, Saul. Hey guys, did you catch that? It wasn't me, right? It wasn't me, it was Saul, right? So here David's off the hook. He recognizes it's about Saul here, okay? Okay, it goes on. In verse 2 it says, the Gibeonites were not Israelites, but rather a remnant of the Amorites. So you have to go to Joshua chapter 9. If you want to get the fact checking on that and understand the story, go to Joshua 9. But it says the Israelites had taken an oath concerning them, but Saul, the former king, had tried to kill them in his zeal for the Israelites and Judah. So basically, the Israelites made a promise, said to the Gibeonites, we're not going to harm you. We'll make a treaty with you. And then Saul tried to take back that promise and just went like crazy on the Gibeonites, right? Then it says, so David summoned the Gibeonites and spoke to them. David took the initiative after finding out this was about how Saul had treated the Gibeonites. David's response was not to wait for the Gibeonites to come and share what was on their hearts. David took the initiative to go to the Gibeonites to speak to them. So I want you to understand that today, this is what I want to do. I want to be like David. What God has been putting in my heart, I want to be obedient and just not wait. I want to walk in faith instead. It says in verse 3, he asked the Gibeonites, what should I do for you? Not what should we do? David took on the responsibility. What should I do for you? How can I make atonement so that you will bring a blessing on the Lord's inheritance? It's an interesting word, atonement. We use it often. Christ is our atonement, and we look at the death on the cross as being our atonement, and it's true. But the word atonement actually is kafar, which is in the Hebrew, and it means to cover up with like tar. There's this substance called bitumen, which was like an oily clay in that region. And so they would take that clay and they'd let it kind of like get all the water kind of out of it. So now it's just oily. And then they would cover it over buildings or cover it over ships. And then it would harden as like a whole, like a clay base. And then nothing would permeate through there. It would seal up all of the cracks, any holes, anything like that. They would put this in there, and then there would not be anything that would be able to get through any longer. And so that is what the word is being used here, is that David is saying, how can I cover up all of the brokenness that has come from this? How can we make this thing right again? How can we make this usable? It's translated, how can we right a wrong? That's how it's used now in the Hebrew context. How can we right a wrong? I want you to understand. He's saying, how can I make, this is what David's saying, how can I make an atonement so that you will bring a blessing on the Lord's inheritance? How is it that we can atone so that you can bring a blessing on the Lord's inheritance? The Craig McKibben version here is for us to understand that David was saying, Gibeonites, you are the gatekeepers to God's blessing. You are the gatekeepers, and the only way that we can see God's blessing is if we right this wrong. If we cannot try and circumvent you, we cannot try and crawl over you, we cannot try and go around. No, we have to right now address this issue. You're the gatekeepers of God's blessing. And David saw that he had to start the change. David said, I have to turn things around. It's up to me. What can I do? We're too busy in this world waiting for other people to do other things to try to right wrongs. And David's saying it's not going to start getting right until I come and say, what can I do to make things right? Well, it's interesting what the Gibeonites say in verse 4. And the more that I read this, the more God was showing me. It says this. Let's read this. It says, the Gibeonites said to him, we are not asking for silver or gold from Saul or his family, and we cannot put anyone to death in Israel. So the Craig McKibben version there is that we don't want hush money. We don't want you just to give us money and everything's okay. No, we don't want that. And also, we don't want to blame people who had nothing to do with it. We don't want to blame and just throw everybody into some melting pot and just say, oh, blah. No. We don't want to do that either. And then David says, whatever you say, I will do for you. So David said that. And then they replied to the king, as for the man who annihilated us and plotted to destroy us, so that we would not exist within the whole territory of Israel. Let me just say, I think some triggers are going off here. Like, I think, they haven't been in a therapy session. They haven't worked through some of their anger. It's almost like this is the first time that somebody's actually coming to them. And it's like, blah, it's all coming out. And sometimes we go, whoa, and we hear something. But it's the first moment when somebody who's so hurt and so damaged has the opportunity to say exactly how they feel. So he said, as for the man who annihilated us and plotted to destroy us so we would not exist within the whole territory of Israel, let 7 of his male descendants be handed over to us so we may hang them in the presence of the Lord at Gibeah of Saul, the Lord's chosen. This is a crazy text, okay? And now I want you to know there's good news, okay? In the Hebrew, that word doesn't always mean hang. You don't have to worry about that. It doesn't mean hang. Sometimes it means to impale or to expose to death, right? You know what I mean? So it doesn't necessarily mean hang. It could mean, so you know what? Maybe it's not good news. Okay, so anyways, okay, here. So the king answered to this request, can I just buy you flowers and say sorry, right? No, obviously, that's not what he said here. But I'm sure, some of us want to, maybe I've done that. But anyways, okay, so the king answered, I will hand them over. Oof. I tell you, if I was a descendant of Saul, I would, cross the border if I could for the draft. Okay, you know what I mean? Okay. But it says, it said in verse 7 and 8, I'll just paraphrase, David gets 7 male descendants from Saul, hands them over, and I'm sure they're just going to scare them, right? I'm sure the Gibeonites, they're just going to scare those guys. And it says, they hanged them. Or, remember, they impaled. Maybe they impaled. Okay, but anyways, on the hill in the presence of the Lord. And then the 7 of them died together. Probably not their final wish. Okay. They were executed in the first days of the harvest at the beginning of the barley harvest. Happy Mother's Day. Let's pray. No, okay, that's not what it is. Okay, but here, I want you to understand maybe today why it is that I found probably the most obscure text in order to talk about Mother's Day. Because guys, men, we're the descendants of Saul. We're the ones that have been carrying the lineage of things that have been done in the past, and we've done nothing to try and rectify it. Notice that David went to the Gibeonites, never says ever once one of Saul's kids went to the Gibeonites and said, you know what my dad was wrong. What my dad did was wrong. We're those people. We're the ones who try to remove the oath that God gave each and every woman. You're saying, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Oath. Well, got to go all the way to the beginning, where it says in Genesis chapter 1, where God said, let us make man in our image. So he created mankind, male and female. The female fully reflecting the image of God. And that was something that God imparted on women, and for centuries and millennia, men, for whatever reason, have tried to shut it down. I'll tell you something, I've looked in the Bible, and I would love for you to correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see anywhere in the Bible it says that there were only men in the upper room. When the Spirit of God fell and empowered all of them, and they all began to speak in other tongues. Do me a favor, read through the Pauline epistles, the letters that Paul writes, and show me one time where Paul actually commends men who raised Timothy. Everyone that he comments on being instrumental in Timothy's development were women. And well, women can't speak in church. Well, if that's true, it's kind of hard to be a prophetess, right? And how is it that there are prophetesses and maybe they're just not allowed to speak? Maybe they just have like real killer like interpretive dance skills. Maybe that's what it is. But like here, like we have these ideas. Here's my point. I wonder how much of our spiritual famine stems from past hurts, past damage, past harm. Remember it says that the Gibeonites, I said, were the gatekeepers of God's blessing. I wonder sometimes if how we've treated others, and then specifically in this case, how women have been treated by men, have stopped and brought a famine, a spiritual famine, to God's people. And that truly we can look back and see how women have been so instrumental in being the gatekeepers of God's blessing. So my question then becomes like, how much are we as men and me willing to atone for our part in keeping what has happened against women? I want you to understand, and I want to be very clear, and I am borderline drawing a line in the sand. I don't often get this vocal, but I want to say, it says that David atoned. He didn't apologize. David atoned. He didn't apologize. Was he sorry? Absolutely, but he didn't apologize. And I want you to understand, put this in the chat room, you cannot apologize for what you didn't do. You can't apologize for what you didn't do. And I want to be very clear on that, because sometimes, and I've seen it, we need to apologize for this. We need to apologize. We weren't even alive. Like, how is it that we can apologize for this? Because this is my fear, and this is my own personal opinion. I would love to have discussions about this. And maybe I'm just not woke enough on this, and you need to help me be educated on that. That's fine. I'm okay. But I am telling you, when we try to apologize for what people did in the past, we're asking the hurting to vindicate the ignorant and the underrepentant. We're asking those who are hurt to somehow vindicate the actions of people who are ignorant about what they did or unrepentant of what they did. And that to me is not what forgiveness is. That to me is not coming and asking for atonement to take place. I can't apologize, but I can recognize. I can ask God to open my eyes. I can acknowledge, and we see David have gone to the Gibeonites and said, what can we do? I want to atone for this. To recognize and to acknowledge, to see, to seek to restore. I can ask, what will it take to right the wrongs of the past? Well, I was asking God about that, and I said, God, what do we need to do? What do we need to do to right the wrongs and to stop things from continuing on? And it's very simple. God put on my heart. We're to take 7 men from our church, and we're supposed to send them off to Gibeah. No, okay, that's not it. Okay, and I know some of you wives right now, you're ready to volunteer your husband. Don't do that. Don't put that, please don't do that. I'm just kidding, okay? Okay, please don't do that here. It actually is a very easy fix to right the wrong. It just costs a lot. It's a very easy fix, but it costs a lot. What did David and the people do? They halted the hindering. They halted the hindering. They got rid themselves of Saul's sons. Those who would have kept it going. Those who would have said, yep, this is just the way it goes. Yeah, it's just, and it would just be inbred in them and over and generation after generation after generation. No. They halted the hindering. See, I want you to understand that on this day, every single year, I don't just celebrate moms on Mother's Day, because then we pigeonhole this day to only reflect on those who either bear children or maybe, adopt children or whatever. And then we start going out in different strata of all that. And understand, I am very thankful for those that take that place in our lives. We need those mothers. But they stem from what God has already put in all of women, already put that spirit, that image of God in them. And the reason why I want to address that today and I want to halt the hindering is because I want us to stop giving women only lip service one Sunday a year and then shut their lips for the other 51. I don't want that to happen any longer. So I want to declare openly and freely as the pastor here of First Ave, this is my heart, this is something that I will champion, is that we are willfully and desirously severing Saul's lineage when it comes to the idea of how women should be treated. That we are openly asking to atone and to right the wrong against women. Not what has happened that had no bearing on us individually. If we've done something, we need to right that wrong. But if we didn't do it, we need to stop that from going any further. We are openly acknowledging the church's need, our church's need, for women in all aspects of life and ministry to be cherished and just utilized and part of the fabric of who we are. I'm so thankful for our leadership. I'm so thankful for our board that I went into our first board meeting and I am hearing new voices, both men and women. I'm hearing seasoned voices of men and women. We, as a leadership, our staff is already seen that way. We're already embracing the fact that the image of God is reflected.
Sorry, but check 1, 2. You hear me okay? I hope you hear me okay. Sorry about that. Gavin is on sound, and he decided to turn me off. He wasn't liking what I was saying. I'm teasing. The battery died. But I want to say this, that we want to openly acknowledge the church's need of women, all aspects, meeting with our board, hearing new voices of men and women, hearing established voices on our team. And our staff, it's already part of who the fabric is of our church. we want to openly acknowledge and thank God for the men and the women who are making First Ave what it is. So men, I know it's Mother's Day and it seems like I'm talking to you. I am. Because I want to be like David, and I'm asking you to be like David here today. To be the ones who are going to initiate the conversation, to initiate that atonement process. Not because we ever started it. David didn't start it, but David finished it. David stopped it. We can't apologize, but we have an opportunity now to atone. And so I want to pray that today, on this day, the church, the life, the ministry, the mindsets, the preconceived ideas, the church history, all of that, we've inherited that. And we're going to celebrate those things that have moved us to where we are right now, but we're going to cut off the things that are stopping us, that are being hindrances from walking through the gate of God's blessing. So I want to pray a prayer for all of the women in our church, and I want to pray a prayer for all of the men. Every woman who's listening to this, I want to share that the fullness of God's image is desiring to be reflected and operated in your life. And men, we need to watch them shine. We need to learn, we need to understand, and ask questions like, why so many throw pillows? Things like that. Let's understand, because then things will be better when we take time to understand. Can we just take a moment and pray? God, I want to thank you for this church, the fabric of this church, how both men and women have brought it to where it is today. And God, we don't want there to be any spiritual famine of what you want to do in our lives because we may be carrying some preconceived or ill-educated mindsets or beliefs. Jesus, we thank you for the women in this church. We thank you for the moms. We thank you for the spiritual moms. We thank you for the older mums that are raising the younger mums and the mums that aren't mums yet and they're just influencers. And God, I just pray release over each and every one of them. I pray, God, that they would feel the freedom to walk in the anointing that you've laid over their lives. May we not stand in the way as men. Instead, Lord, I pray that we would stand and cheer and celebrate and see the glory of God operating fully through them. God, I want to apologize myself for every time I've stopped that flow. And God, I pray that we would be mindful as individuals, as men, for every time we've stopped that flow. Because today, God, we want to halt the hindering. So, Lord, I pray that us as men, that you would show us what it really means to be a man. To step out, to say that we're sorry where we are, and to ask for things to be made right. And we ask this, Jesus, in your name. Your name. If you're making that pledge with me as well, put amen in there. Men, women, put that in the chat room. Men, we're saying we're going to stop the hindering. And women, by putting amen in there, we're saying we're going to start flowing. We're going to start letting that happen and start seeing God move in this church through our lives in that. In a moment, we're going to kick over to Jesse and to Rebecca. But I ask you to stick with us, especially women. I want you to stay with us because we want to talk about something very, very special to many of you women today, of something that you may be experiencing. And we want to address that in a loving way and a way to be able to tell you right now that we really love and appreciate you, and we're here with you right now. As we have been doing since January on Thursdays, we would love for you to join our other group, First Staff Church Online. Maybe throw that in the chat room, some of the hosts. A way to join, it's a separate Facebook community where we're going through the Bible together, praying for one another, connecting, all of that. It's separate on its own. You can meet us on Thursday mornings. I'm walking through 2 Samuel, and we're addressing 2 Samuel 17 this week on Thursday morning, 6:30 here on the Pacific Coast. But until we see each other physically together, let's see each other in the chat room, see each other in grocery stores, online, encourage one another. We are going to come together again. But when that happens, let's continue to let the gateway of God's blessing operate through each and every one of us. Happy Mother's Day. Thank you, women, for everything you are in our lives. We want to right the wrong and see you flourish. God bless you. Go in peace.